You may be seated. Honorable Ministers, the Special Envoy, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Yes, I want to say that I'm very delighted to have been invited to come here. But I don't know why I was invited. I think it's because, I'm a candidate for the AU chairmanship. And somebody just decided that probably this is a good platform for me to come and share with you people some of my ideas about this issue of climate change. But I'm happy to see an array of delegates who have come from different parts of the continent to our country, Kenya. As you know, they say that this is the cradle of mankind. They're saying that the oldest species of humanoid, the Turkana boy, found here in Kenya. So I just want to say welcome back home. Well, we are talking about climate change, and we just like a stuck gramophone. You go down and round because it's the same language we speak year in, year out. But maybe that is a subject for later. For now, I just want to say that it's my pleasure to be part of this great and noble occasion where Africa sits with partners through the platform of African Green Climate Finances, designated National Authorities Network, to discuss climate change and how to respond through accelerated access to climate change, climate finance. We are here to exchange ideas on a common problem, the view to develop a common approach and a common solution. I take note that AFDAN has been established to enhance mobility of climate finance, make it more readily accessible to support Africa in enhancing adaptive capacity and building resilience of our people, both in the rural and urban setups through locally led solutions. I'm aware that AFDAN is already recognized by the Committee of African Heads of States and the government on climate change. This gives it the right leverage to undertake its role. Climate finance has been here with us, but access to the finances remains one of the biggest challenges in responding to climate change. I say that will sound like stuck gramophone record. Because as you know, I was in COP15 in Copenhagen. I was in COP16 in Cancun in Mexico. I was in Maputo. I was in Paris. Two years ago, I was in Sharm el-Sheikh. From COP15, from Copenhagen to Sharm el-Sheikh, it was the same language, year in, year out. You go all the time going there to whine, to cry. This is why I was saying that we sound like a stuck gramophone record. The more the things change, the more they remain the same. The continent continues to face some areas of challenges associated with adverse climate change effects. Consequently, the vulnerable segments of our population, particularly the poor in both rural and urban communities, continue to bear the brunt of climate change. As already been said here, that Africa is a victim, not the offender, in this exercise. Africa's emissions is negligible compared to what we are going through globally. Yet you can see that today Africa lives between two twin disasters here. Floods and drought. Year in, year out. This year, this country suffered very severe floods. A lot of infrastructure destroyed. Many people displaced. Up to now, people are still suffering from the consequences of just recent floods. Down there, as we were going through floods here, down the south, there was the drought. They are going through a very severe drought in the south. And this happens across all the continent, year in, year out. So we are victims, yet the offenders themselves keep on using language. They come and use nice language, but that's all it is. The resolutions are passed, they just ignore. So we need to find a way of forcing implementation of resolutions which are passed. Which means that one such fundamental issue is the promise by the rich countries to play their part and help the countries that contribute the least in greenhouse gas emissions into adaptation. Because of the failure to translate the promises into reality, Africa as a continent still has challenges with access to some of the climate finance sources, such as the Green Climate Fund, Global Environment Facility, Least Developing Countries Fund, Adaptation Fund, Climate Investment Funds, as well as the bilateral and multilateral development partners, which are all well-established avenues for accessing climate finance. Consequently, Africa can only access 4% of the climate finances, which is way below the impactful finance. With the rapid urbanization of our continent and the development trajectory, Africa has an opportunity to chart its own pathways, which will ensure that African cities adapt to climate challenges. Because Africa is urbanizing fairly rapidly now. But urbanization is a global phenomenon. Even in Europe, urbanized. European society was also fairly rural. Through after the Industrial Revolution, that rural and urban migration started. And it was not forced. It came gradually. But eventually they planned it and they managed to manage their cities well. Here, at independence, new leadership in the continent was completely ignorant of what was going to happen. Immediately after independence in this country, there was rural-urban migration in the 60s. People were coming to the cities. But then the government at that time asked people to go back to land. There was an order by the head of state then that people go back to the land. Rudi mashambani in Swahili. Even songs were coined. Mzee kasema rudi mashambani hakuna kazi. Mzee kasema rudi mashambani hakuna kazi. People went back to the mashamba. They had nothing useful to do. Started again gradually coming back into the cities. But because the government believed that the order was going to be obeyed, there was no planning to respond to this rural-urban migration. People coming up and started putting up temporary shelters to live in. These shelters eventually grew up and they are now christened informal settlements. Read slums. That is how slums begin to grow in most of our urban areas. Today, as we sit here, over 60% or the population you see on the streets there in Nairobi, those who are not Kenyans, live in slums today. Those who are unplanned settlements, where there are no sanitation, there are no roads, there is no electricity, there's no water. In some of those sanitation habitations, they could say there's no toilets. There's what they call the flying toilet. The flying toilet is somebody goes relieves himself in a newspaper, then throws it away. If you are unfortunate to be passing by, the word greets you. So these are some of the things that we need to deal with on the continent. This is how serious the situation is. As we host the 10th special session of the African Ministerial Conference on Environment, that's in Abidjan, the African Urban Forums at Addis Ababa, and the World Urban Forum in Cairo, all happening in the last part of this year, we are encouraged to focus our energy and priority on building resilience through key programs, notably financing locally led climate actions and building climate resilience of the urban poor. This will have great potential for both the rural and urban communities. Currently, cities account for about 75% of the world's energy consumption and are responsible for over 70% of the global greenhouse emissions. The way cities are planned, built and managed is key to reducing carbon emissions and keeping global warming within the limits of 1.5 degrees Celsius as set by the Paris Agreement of 2015 on climate change. Efforts of city authorities must translate into better and sustainable urban environments that result in improved air quality, sustainable use of ecosystems, cleaner energy, reduction of overall energy consumption and greenhouse gas emission, and improved waste management. So in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, to address the devastating impacts of climate change, we can't continue with the business as usual approach. It is important that we change the game. I strongly believe that AFDAN is the game changer. AFDAN therefore has a critical role in supporting the African Union Commission in its commitment to climate action. AFDAN is expected to be fully committed to enhancing mobilization of climate finance and enhance its access to all the 55 African countries. This will help Africa to deal with this issue seriously, because this is an issue that Africa must confront head-on if Africa hopes to develop. Africa is the richest continent on the planet Earth in as far as raw materials are concerned. Yet it is a paradox that the richest is also the poorest in as far as the living conditions of these people are concerned. This is a paradox that we can actually reverse as a people. Yes, you can, the historical reasons to justify what is there today. But we cannot live in history forever. Other countries were also colonized, for example. But they have marched on. So it's time that Africa took its destiny in its own hands and worked as one unit. If we are going to negotiate for compensation, which is our right, because Africa, for example, has got also one of the biggest carbon sinks in the world, the second largest after Amazon, the Congo forest. So Africa needs to be compensated. But if we go as Kenya, we go as DRC, Nigeria, Guinea, Senegal, Egypt, Algeria, South Africa, then we're not listening to you. They keep on taking you round and round and round. I've told you because I've told you I've been to these international conferences, these COP conferences. The resolutions are being passed. You can talk until your voice is hoarse. But after that, people pack up and go. Heads of state jump or come in on jets, land and quick there to go and make speeches. Making speeches back on the jet and go back. They wait for the next other conference next year. So the people who are just doing those conferences, they move from one conference to another conference. Each year they take 2 months or 3 months camping in those conferences. But nothing concrete comes out of them. You must make sure that something concrete comes out of those conferences. The African Union can be the champion of this. African Union should be able to speak more effectively on behalf of the interests of Africa if the African government give it the power and the mandate to do so. And that's the reason why I've offered myself to run for the position of African Union chairmanship. I hope that I will be able to use that position effectively to represent Africa, to make sure that Africa claims this century. I finished by telling you the story I tell of an African lion. African lion, there are several African lions. In the soccer, those of you who know soccer, the Cameroonians are called the indomitable lions. The ones of Senegal are called the lions of Teranga. The ones of Morocco are called the Atlas lions. So the lion is a very important animal in Africa. See, the king of the jungle. Now the African lion is challenging the Asian tiger. Tell the Asian tiger that you, Asian tiger, you've danced on the world stage alone now for too many decades. The European bear retreated to the poles, North Pole, long time ago. The American panda is also on the retreat. You have been there alone all this time. I myself have been here asleep in the Congo, the jungles of the Congo. But now I'm awake. I have the giant Congo forest, the mighty river Congo, the mighty Nile, the Niger, the Zambezi, the Limpopo, surrounded by peaks, the Kilimanjaro and Kenya to the east, the Atlas Mountains to the west. And here I'm sitting on African gold, African diamonds, African bauxite, African iron ore. And I'm going to turn all this, and African oil, I'm going to turn all this wealth, these raw materials into wealth, and claim the 20th century as truly an African century. End of the message of African land. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much for that captivating speech. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you. Let's take our seats, please. You know, the Prime Minister's challenge us as we head to